This series is being supported by Hipshot Products, US-made guitar and bass hardware, and the Guitar Marie, custom pickups hand-wound in the USA. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome to part 4 of the Ibanez 7-string mod project. Today is about the most tricky part. It's about gluing the flame maple veneer on the top, on the headstock, and also on the back of the guitar. So I started off with the headstock because that's probably the easiest thing to do. And just by the way, in case you're wondering, I got this sheet of veneer off eBay from, I think it was Edelholz Design from Germany. Now, I love and I hate this sheet because, well, it has a super nice grain and it's super thin. On the other hand, because it is so thin, it is so hard to work with. I mean, the headstock was okay because that was a small sheet and I could get enough pressure with the clamps, but you will see the body was just the hardest thing to deal with ever, because once this veneer gets moist, or it absorbs moisture, and the moisture comes from the glue, it just gets wobbly like a thin piece of cardboard or paper, and it's just impossible to get it flat onto the surface. Now on the headstock it worked because I've had so much pressure from 4 clamps, but on the body I could not clamp it down because, well, first of all I didn't have enough clamps, and second of all for the arm bevel it was impossible to clamp that down because it's a curve. Yeah. Was it a mistake to not wetten it and press it flat? I don't know. I tried it with a little sheet and it still makes a curve. It just wants to curve because it's so thin. You will see the disaster later on. Now the headstock worked perfectly. I mean, I could never imagine that it was so hard to do the body, because the headstock went so well. Very carefully opening the holes for the tunas with a chisel and some sandpaper. It's a fiddly work and you have to be careful, but I mean, if you take your time, it's not really hard. Now I had the idea to glue a little piece onto the cavity cover because I thought that would look really cool and really expensive guitar-like, you know. And that also worked really nicely because I put a ton of books on there. German literature at its best. No, I'm just kidding. Doing the headstock and the cavity cover was a really fun part of this project because it's finally something productive and not destructive like I had to butcher that body to get the primer off, and that was just, I mean, it was not fun at all because it's just like destroying and bringing a guitar back to its original state is the hardest thing ever. So as you may know, I wanted to do a back top or whatever you call it, and I figured it would be the best to start with that. So if I screwed it up, it would be the back at least. And I don't know, I screwed it up kind of because it is just so hard to put that tiny thin piece of veneer on that rather complex shape, especially where the belly cut is, because that's not a 90-degree angle, and all the holes. I mean, it's just, it doesn't feel very productive because, I don't know, it just feels like I'm fixing something all the time. It's not really creative, you know? So I figured it would be the best to lay it down onto the veneer and press it down with a lot of weight. And I mean a lot. Just checking. There was quite a lot of squeeze out, but I mean that's normal with that pressure. So I let that sit overnight. That's me watching Rabea Massad's Happy New Year video on the 1st of January while I'm working. It's quite relaxing. So yeah, as you can see, doesn't look very nice already, and there were cracks. Of course there were cracks. So yeah, took a cutter and roughly cut out the excess material. That's the word I'm looking for. The thing is, you have to be so careful because it's going to crack so fast, this veneer, because it's so thin. It's like I said, it's like working with a sheet of paper. And especially that belly cut was impossible to get, you know, a neat transition from the basswood body. Filling, all the mistakes. Here I'm using my Dremel, my new wonderful Dremel that I bought recently, to clean up the edges, and that worked really nicely. I'm really happy with that thing. Now I used a file, a metal file, because I don't have any other file. Yeah, so I used a metal file to bevel the edges and to make a smooth transition, or at least I tried to. Yeah. Here I'm marking the center line of the body, so I could do a non-perfect book match. Here I am cleaning out the neck pocket because that surface was so rough. There was some primer on there, and I figured it would be nicer to have a really flat surface. And I also thought, because that neck pocket was so loose, that I would shim the side of the neck to make it fit more snug. Yeah. Huh? And because this project is going so well, I'm going to fuck up my neck shim later on when I'm removing the excess veneer with the chisel, because that's so sharp. I'm an idiot. I'm an absolute idiot. All my friends and family say, well, it's your first time doing this. I don't care. It's still, I don't know. Just checking if the neck remains straight, and onto the first half of the top veneer, which was probably the easiest one because it's a rather small sheet and there's no curve. But I still managed to get some bubbles in there, and yeah, beautiful. Now don't worry about the holes, just cover them up with the glue so you get a nice bond, and it's very easy to clean those out later on. Make sure to cover the edges well, because that's the most tricky area. There you can see how it is dealing with this veneer. It's truly like a piece of paper, you know, it's bending upwards, and once I had the weight on there, I couldn't check anymore if it was still aligned, but it started wandering because the glue is, you know, slippery and not dry yet. So I had to double and triple check if it was aligned with the center line. Usually if you do a top on a real guitar, the top is already book matched and then you glue it on. And it's not like that. But okay. Yeah, cleaning out the cavities with the chisel, being very, very, very careful not to rip out any wood. Again, using my wonderful Dremel. Again, using the file to get a slight bevel onto the top edge and to clean off the glue residue. I've never did so much sanding in my life ever before. And I thought I was doing a lot of sanding with the other project. I love this tool. It's really nice to get a cone shape into the wood to make your screws recessed. Here I'm using the Dremel again to clean off some glue residue of that edge in the middle, so I could have a nice and tight fit of the other piece. So yeah, on to the most tricky part of this project, which is not going to end up well, unfortunately. I'm wondering if I was using too much glue. I don't know. Don't think so. Because the excess was just squeezed out. This is just nerve-wracking to watch again. Seriously. Never ever again. Okay, so for the arm bevel, I used some sand weights that you use for training. I don't know how you call that. And it looked absolutely fine. And then when I checked 3 hours later, I didn't catch it on camera, so I'm just gonna tell you. When I was checking just a bit later, when it's still drying up, I discovered that the arm bevel was completely wobbly because there were some bubbles in there. So my emergency reaction was to cut into those bubbles and remove material so I could get the most of the surface of the veneer flat onto the body. But I had to make cuts into the top. Yes, I know, but I don't know, it was the only thing I could do, and I thought it was the only way to kind of save this body from being completely ruined. So yeah, you can see already now I have filled those cuts, and I'm going to do some bevels now, and I was hoping that the stain would cover those cuts, and it kind of did, but also didn't, and we're gonna see that in the next video. So yeah, I ended up with a very, very wobbly top, and I'm really not happy about that. But what you gonna do? I don't know. I can't go back. I can't sand off that whole thing. So I have to live with that, and I thought the best I could do with it is to give the entire guitar a used and rough look. So, you know, I made use of my mistake, and just tried to do something intended, you know. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this horrible episode of the Ibanez 7-string mold project. Stay tuned for the next video, which is coming very soon. It's about staining and finishing this horrible body. Anyways, take care and I will see you next time.